Hey everyone, in this section, let's look at shifts of the demand curve and supply curve in the foreign exchange market. One reason the demand curve shifts or people are going to buy more of a currency is the expectation the currency will appreciate in value. One reason the supply curve shifts or people are going to sell more of a currency is the expectation the value of the currency will depreciate. I have the demand and supply graphs of the US dollar and the Mexican peso. Panel A, I have US dollar on the horizontal axis and the exchange rate, which is peso per unit of dollar on the vertical axis. And panel B, I have quantity of pesos on the horizontal axis. On the vertical axis, I have dollar per unit of pesos. I can see panel A and panel B. These are mirror images of one another. Panel A, the demand curve and the supply curve are intersecting at 10 pesos is equal to $1. So this is the peso dollar exchange rate and $8.5 billion are traded in the foreign exchange markets. On panel B, the demand curve and the supply curve for pesos are intersecting at 1 peso is equal to $0.1 and 85 billion pesos are being traded in the foreign exchange markets. So over here I saw 10 pesos is equal to $1. So 1 peso is equal to 1 over $10. So this is equal to $0.1. Okay. Now let me look at how and why the demand curve and the supply curve will shift. In this example, we are looking at the market for pesos and I want to recreate the graph here so that it becomes easier for students to understand. On the horizontal axis, I have quantity of pesos. The vertical axis, I will have the exchange rate, which is dollar per unit of peso, or how many dollars 1 peso can buy. Now I'm going to draw the demand curve for pesos here. This is the demand curve for pesos, and I'm going to draw the supply curve for pesos, which is supply for pesos. Looks like the exchange rate is equal to 1.2. That means $1.2 per peso. And the quantity of pesos traded in this market is equal to 2 billion. Now let's say there is some expectation here, and the expectation is the future exchange rate for pesos will go up. If this is the expectation, people are going to buy more pesos. So I'm going to have a new demand curve for pesos, and the demand curve for pesos is definitely going to shift to the right. So investors want to buy more pesos, and at the same time investors want to supply less pesos. So the supply curve for pesos is going to shift to the left. We are going to have another point of intersection at E1, and the new exchange rate is $1.4 per 1 peso. So the peso has appreciated in value or gone up in value. Some important features here: the demand curve and the supply curve, they are going to shift at the same time. When the demand curve shifts to the right and supply curve shifts to the left, the exchange rate appreciate, or I'm going to say the peso is worth more in terms of dollar. So initially I had 1 peso was equal to $1.2. Now 1 peso can buy more US dollars, which is $1.4, and peso has appreciated in value. And take a look at the quantity of pesos traded in the market. That is not changing. Quantity of pesos traded in the market has stayed the same, only the exchange rate has gone up. So my comment here is the quantity of foreign currency does not really change so much, or it stays the same. The price of foreign currency keeps changing. So we can say the foreign exchange market is very volatile because the prices keeps moving all the time. Now let's look at another reason why the demand curve and the supply curve will shift to the right and to the left. Say the rates of return in a country is relatively high, then that country will tend to attract funds from abroad, and the demand curve will shift to the right and the supply curve will shift to the left simultaneously. So in this example, I have quantity of dollars on the horizontal axis and I have pesos per dollar on the vertical axis. That means I have the exchange rate on the vertical axis. Initially, the exchange rate is 8 pesos is equal to $1. The demand curve and the supply curve, both of them are intersecting at E0, and quantity of dollars traded in the foreign exchange market is 8.5 billion. Now, because the rates of return or interest rates are higher in US compared to Mexico, the demand curve for dollars will shift to the right, and at the same time the supply curve for dollars will shift to the left. We have a new point of intersection which is E1 and a new exchange rate which is 9 pesos is equal to $1. Because we can buy more foreign currency compared to before, we can say dollar has appreciated in value or gone up in value, but definitely the quantity traded in the market has not changed. Okay. Now let's look at the third reason why the demand curve will shift. If a country experiences relatively high inflation compared to other countries, the demand curve will shift to the left and the supply curve will shift to the right. In this example, I have the quantity of pesos on the horizontal axis, and on the vertical axis I have the exchange rate which is dollar for 1 peso. The initial exchange rate is $2.5 is equal to 1 peso, where the demand curve and the supply curve are intersecting at E0. Now a rise in inflation in Mexico is gonna be detrimental to the Mexican peso, and this will shift the demand curve for pesos to the left and the supply curve for pesos to the right at the same time, and we end up with another exchange rate which is 0.5 dollars is equal to 1 peso. Because pesos can buy less of foreign currency which is dollar, the exchange rate has gone down. Just remember here the demand curve and the supply curve shifts together simultaneously, and the quantity of currency traded in the market stays the same. So that is all for now. Thank you very much.